Hey, Sleep Deprivation Project Day 1. Also, Happy Chinese New Year to everyone. What's up? It's a Culture Detective here investigating your favorite animes, and today I'm kind of sleepy. But also I'm gonna review some anime, and I'm gonna be reviewing ID Invaded. So ID Invaded is an anime by Naz Studios and directed by Aoki A and written by Maijo Otaro. And it is an anime about. It's kind of confusing, but to put it simply, it's basically Inception meets Mindhunter, where the police try to find serial killers' true identity and solve crimes by diving into the unconscious mind of a serial killer. And to do that, they have to go to the crime scene and scan for a certain particle, which is really weird. It's like as if your brain is leaking particles out of your body or something. So these particles are called cognitive particles, and you scan it with a certain tool called Mitsuhanome or something. After scanning it into the Mitsuhanome, then it's going to be registered into a system, and some people are going to be sent into the systems and go to sleep, and thus joining the world, the unconscious world of the serial killer. But only serial killers can go into the world, or killers in general, because the unconscious world isn't just some unconscious world. It only exists barely because of their will to kill. Yeah, it's very confusing. So, let's talk about the OPs and the EDs first. Actually, there's only one OP and one ED in the season, and both of them are pretty bad, unfortunately. The song of the OP is kind of annoying and kind of generic and basic. It's just passionate rock song, except it's not catchy, it's really repetitive. The ED is probably even worse. The warping synths, the guitars, it's just bad, and the visuals, it's a friggin' mess. Though I kind of like the visuals of the OP. I think the 3D objects going around, the information age, oh, big data. It's pretty fitting to the tone of the story. Let's just say that. And we have the story itself, which started off kinda rocky, but actually I kinda enjoy it towards the end. The season starts off pretty lame and confusing as well, with our main character, Na- Narihisago. That's his name, Narihisago, or Narihisago. Narihisago is a guy whose wife and whose daughter are killed or died simply because of a serial killer known as Challenger. And for revenge, he killed the Challenger. So now he's a killer. So now he's in jail. But instead of actually going to jail, the police is like, you know what? Let's use him to dive into serial killer subconscious. And these serial killer subconscious or unconscious is called the ID well. More like it well. And that's actually a little inaccurate, because according to Sigmund Freud, it actually means short unconscious, but also the simple pleasure drives of a person, not necessarily a killing drive. If murder is involved, it's likely to be the unconscious part of the ego, but let's not dwell too much on the psychological aspects. Anyways, Narihisago, who was a police officer, now a murderer, still kept on working with the police by diving into these ID wells, which belong to serial killers, and sort of interpret these symbolic dreams and visions and stuff. The story spent episodes 1 and 2 in this perforator's unconscious mind, his ID well. And Perforator is one of the 7 serial killers, alongside with the Challenger. So the Perforator essentially kills people by drilling holes in their heads, and he also drilled a hole in his own head. So his ID well is completely fractured, all broken apart, jigsawed, and every time someone joins an ID well, they're gonna have an amnesia where their memory is wiped. They don't know anything. There will only be a few things they remember. One, there's a dead girl. Her name is Kairu-chan. And they are brilliant detectives. Whoever joined the ID well, that is, they're brilliant detectives, and they are there to solve the murder of Kairu, and thus solving the actual real life murders of whatever victims of that serial killer. And yeah, again, it's really confusing. I didn't really enjoy it at first, and it's weird. And then we have this side character, this girl who looks like she's 10 years old, but actually she's 23. She's called Hondo Machi, and she's like a rookie, and she's working with Matsuoka. And together they are on the analytics team, and they would go out and scan cognitive particles, and they didn't really matter all that much at the beginning, so there's that. And then we have episode 3, which is just not related to the overall story at all. There's one really weird thing, is that Narihisago and people in the police department, they can actually see and hear things in Narihisago's perspective, even when Narihisago is in the ID wells. But Narihisago are not aware of his true identity in the ID well. In the ID well, his name is Sakaido. And for some reason, in every ID well he has been to, he always sees the same guy. The guy in a coat with a cane, and everyone calls him John Walker, which sounds like a brand of whiskey. And I guess episode 3 is kind of related to that, but also not really. However, the pace of the anime really picks itself up on episodes 4 to 6 with the Grave Digger arc, where we are confronting Grave Digger. And Grave Digger is one of the 7 serial killers as well. And his method of killing is kind of scary and really cruel, to a point where I was actually kind of interested in seeing how they're going to find him and arrest him. And the story also took some twists and turns, which is pretty interesting. And then on episode 6, the story actually began to hook me when Matsuoka decided to tell his boss, the boss of that police department, to move Hondo Machi's position from being on the analytics team to being in ID Wells, because Matsuoka believed that Hondo Machi has the capability to kill someone, which is kind of weird. And at first, I thought that's kind of lame. It's like one of those Riverdale things, like, ooh, I have serial killer genes. But to be honest, I think this deepens the personality of Hondo Machi. B, it allows Hondo Machi to be more involved with the overall story. Thus, I was more interested. Third of all, we have John Walker reappearing in Grave Digger's ID well, and people working in that police department began to think that maybe John Walker is one of them, like there is a mole among them, and is secretly John Walker, who appears in every serial killer's ID wells because he is the master of all serial killers that they have found so far. And then we have episode 7 to 9, which is just unexpectedly entertaining. Let's just say that. Unexpectedly entertaining. And then we have episode 7 to 9. And on episode 7, Hondo Machi goes to Narihisago's well. And it is definitely one of the more interesting wells. Again, every single wells are different. Like on the first one, the world is fragmented. The second one, there was a spinning tower and people are getting sniped left and right. There was one where it's one gigantic circular train. It's like a dream world basically, but messed up. Okay, Hondomachi went to Narisago well, and some interesting things happened. There were some interesting findings. And then at the same time, Narihisago and the Perforator. Yes, the Perforator from episodes 1 and 2 of the story, he didn't just die or go to prison. He also worked with the police. So Narihisago and the Perforator went into Momoki's well. Momoki is the director of that police department. They went to his well, and then they also found some similarly interesting findings. And then they followed up with these interesting findings. And now the anime has fully hooked me. Minor spoiler alert, but they found a well within a well. And it's one thing to approach it like Inception. Man wakes up again, and it's another way to approach it like ID Invaded, where it's almost like on a totally different perspective where, okay, we're going to enter layer 1. Wait, there's a layer 2? It's possible? What? Okay, also, by the way, the reason why I'm really quiet right now is that my mom's friend and my brother's friend, aka my mom's friend's son, is in my apartment right now, so one sec. Episodes 10 to 13 continue to be very entertaining. We have a plot twist, a reveal about Momoki's well, which is pretty interesting, and then we have John Walker's true identity finally being revealed. We also have 2 episodes called Inside Outed, which I will not spoil all that much, but these 2 episodes are extremely entertaining. Every single moment in these 2 episodes are just interesting and fascinating in my opinion. And sure, I've seen something like this in Mr. Robot, where you kind of don't know if it's reality or not because you've been to too many wells, you've been to too many subconscious minds, and you just can't figure out if this is real life or not, and it's kind of trippy and it's kind of strange, and I really like it when stories do that thing. It's really cool, and that goes for Inside Outed. And Inside Outed is the title of episodes 9 and 10. And episodes 11 to 13 show the fight between John Walker and the police department, specifically Narisago, Hondomachi, and the Perforator, who's now a good guy. And it's a pretty interesting fight, pretty climactic as well. I wouldn't say it's the most smartly written fight, but it's still entertaining nonetheless. We also have another side problem, which is just as interesting, where one of the victims of John Walker might actually be alive, and is actually alive, and is hiding somewhere in the building itself that the police department works in, and it's causing a lot of chaos. What is going on? That side storyline is pretty interesting as well. I'll say this though, there were some plot twists and some dramatic moments that aren't as emotional or as dramatic as I would have liked it to be. They're not as impactful, but I really appreciated the fact that the writers actually wrapped everything up. The John Walker storyline ended in season 1. All the people already had a redemption at the end. Everything turned out fine at the end. There were no cliffhangers because I guess the writers were like, pretty scared that season 2 may get canceled or something, even though this was actually adapted from a novel or a manga, I think. But it actually wraps up. So overall, ID Invaded is surprisingly entertaining and interesting. Again, it's not the most groundbreaking thing ever. It's Inception meets Mindhunter, but and the characters, they're not that deep or layered or anything, but there were a lot of interesting twists and turns, interesting findings, pieces of puzzle that you as the audience have to connect yourself in order to be like, oh, that thing, this thing, oh, and that's pretty cool, I guess. My favorite episode here is, of course, episodes 9 and 10, Inside Out It, and my least favorite is episode 3. I am giving ID Invaded decent 8 out of 10. So, every 5 seconds. So, have you watched ID Invaded? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate it? Like it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. I'm going to watch Kaguya-sama Love is War 1 and 2, and then Attack on Titan Final Season, Part 1.